Stand, simplify, and practice. Stand, simplify, practice. If you remember nothing else from what I share with you today, if you remember those three things, you will dramatically increase your ability to communicate with anyone in any situation, whether it's online or face-to-face. Stand, simplify, and practice. 3 weeks ago, I was working with the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Illinois Institute of Technology. They have a program there that's called the IPro Program. And what IPro stands for is the Interprofessional Projects Program. And what this program entails is it takes students from different fields and different schools within the university, whether it be business, engineering, computer science, architecture, psychology, and they put them onto teams to work together for a semester to come up with a solution for a real world problem. At the end of the semester, they're supposed to come up with a product or a service or an idea that solves a problem that really is pressing in today's society. Every year they give a presentation at the end, but this year they decided to do something a little bit different. They decided to have a pitch competition where they would get up in front of a panel of judges online and present their ideas to people from industry, because that's where the judges were from. People who are from the business community, and they would say whether or not they would invest in the product or not. And the school had brought me in for two reasons. Number one is I'm a communications instructor. And number two is that I have a lot of experience as an entrepreneur and as an inventor, bringing a product to life, literally from conception in a garage, crowdfunding it, manufacturing it overseas, and ultimately selling it on Amazon and our website. And during the course of the 9 years that I brought this product to life, I've had countless opportunities and situations where I've had to be able to communicate effectively, whether it's one-on-one in front of an investor or in front of hundreds of people trying to pitch my product to encourage them to purchase what I was about to sell them. And so over the course of 2 days, I watched about 12 different teams present their pitches. And for the most part, they did really well in the sense that they were very smart individuals. Most of them were STEM-centric in terms of their education, science, technology, engineering, and math. And they did a lot of great work. However, where their biggest challenge was in being able to articulate their ideas and present in a way that was interesting, engaging, and persuasive to the listener. And that's where I wanted to give them some advice and some help. Because for the most part, a lot of them fell into the same kind of traps that a lot of professionals do now, because a lot of professionals have never received any actual training. So many of them were kind of monotone when they were speaking. So when they were talking like this, and it never really ever changed. And this is how they were speaking. It's very difficult to engage with someone when they're speaking like that. Others, it was just a data dump. They just dumped as much possible information in there as possible. And the listener, especially if you'd never heard about the product or heard about the issue, it was just way too much information. Others, you could tell they were a little bit more introverted, a little bit shyer than the rest. Many of them, English wasn't their first language, so they're a little bit hesitant in terms of how they were speaking. And what they ended up doing is it was almost as if they were moving further and further and further back as they were presenting. Although they were all actually sitting while they presented, because that's what they did. They just sat in front of the computer and they spoke, but it felt like they were kind of going further and further back. And another common problem that occurred, and this is something that happens a lot on Zoom type presentations now, or Zoom type communications, is people lost the ability to make eye contact and communicate with the person that they're speaking to. And they basically did a read along of a presentation. Either they were reading their PowerPoint slides or they were reading from a script. And that lost a lot of their message. I spent those 2 days giving them a lot of different tips and strategies on how to improve their respective presentations. However, at the end, I wanted to give everyone 3 general ideas, 3 powerful ideas and strategies that they could all apply that would help them do better in 2 weeks' time at the IPro Day, at the pitch competition, and in their careers beyond. And those 3 things, those 3 ideas are stand, simplify, and practice. The same things that I hope to share with you today. And on the surface, they may seem overly simplistic, like the concept of standing. Do I just stand? No, it's not just standing. The word stand is meant to represent an idea, a way of thinking that changes how you think about presenting. For example, let's talk about standing. When I say stand, to think about standing, it means to literally, yes, take the action of stand up, but it's to use your whole body as part of your message. More often than not, on a Zoom type presentation nowadays, this is what you see. At best, you'll see a head, maybe a little bit of facial expression. Most people won't have any lighting on their face, and it'll be very dry, very boring generally. It works, but it's not ideal. But when you think about the concept of standing, what it does is it frees up your entire body to help get your message across. Because the act of standing changes your physicality, it changes your presence in the eyes of the person who's listening, it changes your ability to communicate, it changes how much energy you have, how much presence you have on screen to be able to get your message across. So the simple act of standing can change a lot of the perception and your ability to get your message across. The second idea is the idea of simplifying. And this doesn't mean dumbing it down, although sometimes you have to think about, maybe I have to reduce the difficulty or the complexity of what I'm trying to get across so that it doesn't go over the head of my listener. So I have to simplify it. And what the idea of simplify means, or it entails, is to ask yourself over and over again, what can I cut out from my message, from my presentation, from my communication that doesn't further my message, that isn't necessary? Because there's two very important things that you have to think about that's happening when you're speaking and you're communicating with someone. And it's a physical and a mental change. And I'm going to put this in contrast with, let's say, a computer. When you are programming a computer, let's say, or you're dealing with a computer, the more information you give it, the happier it is. It has more data to go through. It has more data to extrapolate different ideas and thoughts from, concepts from. But the human body is different. The human is different, because when a human is sitting for a prolonged period of time, listening to you speak, the longer it is, their body is getting physically exhausted. It's uncomfortable. It's not natural to sit for long periods of time. So that's, their body is getting tired and they're getting gradually more and more antsy. And from a mental side, well, that's important to remember as well, because I want you to imagine that the moment you start speaking with someone, their brain essentially starts running on a treadmill. It's burning energy, trying to process all the information that you're giving them. And so the more complex the information that you're giving them, the more detailed, the longer it is, the more confusing or tangents you go on, and the longer you speak, the more fatigued their brains become and the more tired they become. And the more likely they're going to cut out from listening to you. They're going to be distracted by something else. It'd just be too exhausting. And that's why it's very important to embrace the idea of simplicity. What can I cut out? And then the third concept is practice. And practice is fundamentally the most important way to become a better communicator in any situation. If any of you have ever been to a public speaking course or taken a course or read an article online, two powerful ideas that they share with you, best practices that they share with you, are to incorporate humor and to be interactive with your audience, to be engaging with your audience. They're absolutely true. Those are absolutely powerful ideas, and they do work. The catch is, if you have not practiced your material enough, if you're not familiar enough with your material that it's kind of really internalized into your body, your mind is going to be so worried generally of not messing up, of not embarrassing yourself, of not forgetting what you're going to say, that you're not going to be thinking about engaging. You're not going to be able to kind of go off script and engage in some banter, because that's usually where humor comes in. It's not, humor isn't incorporating jokes. It's going along at the pace of the presentation and occasionally going off and pointing out things that may be funny, ironies, or just going off script. That's where humor is found. It's found in the everyday. It's not necessarily programmed in. And that's why practice is so important. So over the next 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to share with you those three ideas a little bit more in depth and give you some specific strategies that you can all apply right away that will take your speaking and your presenting communication to the next level. We're going to start with the first topic, stand. And because I really want to emphasize me as the communicator versus the PowerPoint slide. At the top of your screen, if you don't already know how to do this already, I would challenge you to go to the viewing screen options, and you can click on it and click and select the side-by-side mode. That means you'll have the slide on one side and then me on the side, because the vast majority of my message is going to be me and not the slide. The slide is just there to support what I'm trying to say. And the side-by-side motion position is a very powerful way to get to do that. Here's a question to think about. When you gave your last pitch, when you gave your last presentation, when you had to address a group of people, did you stand or did you sit? If you sat, my question to you then becomes, why did you sit opposed to stand? And the most common answer that I usually receive when people respond by saying they sat is just because that's how everybody does it. It's simpler, we're all already sitting, it just seems a little bit weird to get up. And as I said earlier, sitting is fine, it works. But I would challenge you to think about the fact that sitting can limit your ability to use the rest of your body, to use physical space to get your message across. And that's why standing becomes a very powerful way to get your message across. Because you have to remember this, as a communicator, you have one primary objective, and one primary objective only, is to get an idea from your head into the mind of someone else and get them to take action in the desired way that you want. And you have to use everything in your power for them to take that action. And using all the tools at your disposal is a very smart way to do that. So don't limit yourself I would challenge you not to limit yourself by staying seated. Another reason why people stay seated is because, well, if you think about the concept of public speaking or standing up, addressing a group of people, it's not on the top 10 things that people enjoy doing. A lot of people find a lot of discomfort in it. They're afraid of it. They're introverted, they're shy, they don't want to do it. And standing up, even if it's on Zoom, can seem just uncomfortable. And I get it. I'll be very honest with you. I'm an introvert and I was inherently shy. I'm one of those people who never, ever wanted to get up in front of people and present and communicate. But I developed the skills because I realized that my professional development, my professional career, and my personal career really depended on my ability to become good at it. And my journey actually started with failure. My journey in developing the skills, some of which I'm sharing with you today and others that you'll learn at Toastmasters, started 15 years ago. It was when I started my first business. It was a corporate wellness business. I started with a friend of mine named Justin. And what we would do is we would go into all these companies throughout Chicago and we'd work with their senior executives to help them become more productive at work through manipulating their lifestyle habits. So if they got up and moved more, or they ate a little bit healthier, or they ate a little bit less at work, they would be more productive. And we worked with the executives all over the city. One of the services that we offered were seminars at the end of every month on different topics around that subject. I avoided these like the plague because I never wanted to communicate to others. I never wanted to get up in front of people. It just made me sick. I felt that they were people who were extroverted. They just really loved it. They were naturally good at it. I would let those people do it and I would never have to do it. Fortunately, my partner Justin was extremely good and he did them all. However, there was this one time where he could not do it. And I remember very distinctly, I had to do it. I got to the building, got into the room, and I stood up in front of 40 senior level business executives. And for 60 minutes, I wasted their time. I wasted their time because I tried to use just my words and my intellect to try to get my message across, to try to get them to change their behavior, to try to get them to take an action that I wanted. And as I looked out at them after the presentation, I saw a good portion of them with their hands crossed, heads tilted to the side, with a facial expression saying, I just wasted their time. It was just an awful feeling. And I never wanted to feel that again. And so I decided to do something about it. And I joined Toastmasters, Extreme Toastmasters here in Chicago. And at Extreme Toastmasters, I learned the fundamentals of effective communication. I started to learn the difference that existed between someone who simply talks and someone who can effectively communicate, because there is a difference. Everyone can talk. Anyone can talk. That's how you talk to your friends. That's how you talk with people when you're out for a restaurant, at a bar, just chatter, just having a conversation with someone, just random. But effective communication, trying to intentionally get somebody to do something that you need and you want, well, that's a skill that needs to be learned. And Toastmasters was a great place to learn those skills and also overcome a lot of the anxiety and nervousness that existed for myself, who was an introvert and generally didn't like getting up in front of people. And as my development advanced, I realized that I was still missing a crucial component of effective communicating. And that was to use my facial expressions and my body and physical space to help get my message across. The challenge was that I grew up in a culture, and maybe many of you have this similar experience, maybe not exactly the same, but similar, but in a culture that really pushed the idea that men or leaders had to be essentially stoic. You had to look strong and tough like a leader. You talked little, you just really had to come across as a leader. And it never helped me. It didn't really help me. It actually backfired. And so I went to Second City Improv, their training center, to pay somebody, literally to give somebody money to teach me how to use my face and my body. But it was money well spent, because I want to create a distinction in your head, a visual distinction between someone who knows how to use their body to communicate and somebody who doesn't. So I want you to imagine a salsa dancer, or maybe a great hip hop dancer, or perhaps someone who is a great Latin type dancer. Their movements are seamless and they're so elegant. It's awe-inspiring, and that takes practice. And then on the contrast, you have some people like myself, at least before, who essentially just kind of vibrate on the dance floor because we don't really know what to do. We're kind of hindered by our own inability to know how to use our body. And that's what Second City taught me, how to use my body, my face, and physical space to amplify my message. And then after that, I started working with a professional coach to learn really good structure, how to craft a message that people will actually listen to, because there's an art and a science and a methodology to it. And after all my training, what I realized was to become a great communicator in any setting, it required 4 elements. To be able to craft presentations that are effective, to communicate messages in a way and a method that people will listen to. Number 2 is to be able to deliver it in an engaging fashion that captures people's attention. And then 3rd, it's to be able to show and exhibit confidence, because you can have the best idea in the world. It can be and you could have the best structure in the world, but if you don't show confidence in the idea, good luck. No one's going to buy into it, because a lot of investing, a lot of people buying into your thoughts is based on you, your passion, and your confidence in your idea. And then the 4th is to master the technical skills, especially now, given that we're all on Zoom. You have to be able to know how to toggle between PowerPoint and what happens if there's a power failure, all that kind of stuff. All that applies to your ability to effectively get your message across. And the concept of STAND, well, what STAND does is it covers 2 of those points. It covers confidence and it covers effective presenting. So here are 3 ways that you can apply it right away. The first one is to raise the lens in your laptop or your webcam so it's essentially eye level, like I show in that diagram there. My laptop is high enough so that I'm essentially looking at it. Once it's elevated, look directly at it. If you're a person who doesn't want to really stick out, and if you're standing way back here, yes, it looks clearly like you're standing, but if you come in close enough, just like about this, and you raise your laptop up high enough, it still looks like, yeah, you could be sitting. So you're not going to feel out of place. But there's a couple benefits of it, right? You're standing, you're not sitting, so it's healthier on your body, and you'll be able to use your body much more effectively, like I was saying earlier. Second is to put lighting on your face. Either put a light behind your lens, like I have in that photo there, or you have 2 lights flanking you. And the reason why you do this is so that people can see your facial expressions, especially on Zoom, because Zoom is very 2-dimensional and we can't see the nuances of body language and a lot of the interpretations that we can see of people's messages if we could see them in person. Facial expressions are a powerful tool that we look to. And by putting light on your face, you really help your listener listen to you, understand you, and better get your message. And it's in your best interest. And the third step is to wear powerful clothing from the top to the shoes. And it may seem a little bit weird about how clothes affects a presentation, but it can affect it in two respects. On the one side, it affects the listener, and number two, it affects you. Let's start with the listener. Imagine you went to a doctor's office and you had some ailment, really bad ailment you were dealing with, and the doctor came out and they were wearing pajamas, versus the same doctor came out and they were wearing a white lab coat. Small difference in attire, but it completely transforms how you perceive them. They're exactly the same competency level, but just their appearance changes your perception of them and your openness to listen to what they have to say, whether it's on a conscious level or a subconscious level. That's just one side of it. Now let's talk about how it affects you as the communicator. Imagine a soldier, a military officer. The moment they put on their uniform, they have the flag of their country on their shoulder, they'll stand a little bit taller, they'll walk a little bit prouder. It transforms how they carry themselves. That's the power of clothing. And there's research behind this. I'll give you an example. There is a gentleman by the name of Joe Navarro, and he used to be a body language instructor for the FBI at Quantico, which is their main training center, or one of their main training centers. And he talks about a research study that they did internally to see how something as simple as the choice of clothing their agents wore affected their decision-making process. And what they decided to do is they took a whole bunch of agents and put them into two groups, 1 and 2. Group 1, they dressed up in business attire, the type that you see on television, like the stereotypical FBI agent in business tie, all that. And the second group, well, they had wear military fatigues, the stuff that you see police officers or SWAT officers use. And both groups were given the exact same problem to solve: rescue a little girl from hostage takers. Group 1, wearing the business suits, they opened up a command center, opened up a line of communication, and started to try to negotiate the release of the little girl. The group that was wearing the military fatigues, their plan, as you can imagine, was to kick the door down and go in. And the only difference was the type of clothing that they were wearing. If you think about your own life, when you are at an event and you wear clothing that let's say it's a wedding. Maybe it's not your wedding, but you're in the bridal party or in the groom's party and you're wearing a tux or something. It changes how you feel and you carry yourself. Use that psychology and that phenomenon to amplify your message. So that this is what you do: wear clothes that makes you feel powerful, and wear shoes, dress shoes, beautiful shoes, whatever they are, because that'll help transform how you come across, the energy you project, and your ability to get your message across. That, ladies and gentlemen, is stand. Let's jump into the next one, which is simplify. And as I said earlier, the idea behind simplify is to keep asking yourself, what can I cut out that does not further my end goal, which is to convince somebody to do something? And I'm going to give you an example here. In 2016, a partner and I, not Justin from the previous example, a different partner and I, we launched our crowdfunding for our product. And our product at the time was called Hover, and it was the world's first suspended physical activity device that allowed the user to put their feet on it and keep themselves moving while they sat at the desk. It was designed to make people healthier while they worked. We had worked on it for 4 years, and in 2016, we decided to do a crowdfunding on the crowdfunding platform Indiegogo. And for those of you who aren't familiar with these type of platforms like Indiegogo or Kickstarter, what they are essentially fundraising platforms where an inventor takes an idea, a product, a project, and displays it to the world and says, this is my idea. If you believe in it, please invest. And if we do well enough through your investment and we actually get to making the product, we'll send you it plus a gift. That's generally how it goes. And the crowdfunding is built on 2 real foundational sales platforms, let's say. One is the crowdfunding video, and the second is the landing page of the crowdfunding page. The video is essentially your pitch. It's your presentation. It's your however many minutes you decide to make this video. That's what the the potential investor comes, they look at and they determine whether or not your product is worth their attention, let alone their money. And then the landing page is all that supporting information. I want you to look at giving presentations and pitches is exactly the same. The video is your pitch. It's a short amount of time for you to convey to somebody your message, to get them to be interested enough to either invest at that point or be interested enough to perhaps go to the rest of the landing page and look at everything else that's there so they can get further information. When we first made our crowdfunding video, like many people who are very proud of the work they did, we wanted to make sure, we felt that the audience, the potential viewer, needed to know everything. So we put in all the great research that was done on our product, how it made them healthier. We put in all the great places where people talked about it highly, all the publications that we're in. We put it all the testimonials, all the benefits. We had to put it all in there because we thought it was all crucial. It was a data dump. And our video, first iteration, was about 8 minutes in length. Who the heck is going to watch an 8-minute video? Oh my goodness, what were we thinking? But this is how most presentations nowadays happen. It's a data dump. What someone does is when they're about to give a pitch, they'll go around with a wheelbarrow or something, gathering as much data as they can find, everything that they feel is important, and they put it all into that presentation and present it to the victim. I mean the audience. Fortunately, we had the good fortune of having some great marketing people and some public relations people give us a lot of feedback on our videos and all our work, our crowdfunding. And they kept saying, keep paring it back, keep paring it back, keep paring it back, iteration after iteration after iteration. What can you take out? Do you need all 4 of those statistics? Do you need all that research? Do you need to put in all the demographics that this is helpful for? Do you have to put in all the testimonials? The answer is no. And after all that work, after dozens of iterations, we were able to pare it down to 3 minutes and 30 seconds, less than half. Anything else we felt that was useful in that presentation? Well, we put it on the landing page, because if someone was interested enough or compelled enough by our initial pitch, then they're more likely, if they want more information, to go to the rest of the landing page and find that out themselves. And this is what leads to this next strategy for you when you give your presentations and your pitches, is to have 2 decks, essentially. The first is the deck that you present in front of people, knowing that their brain is getting tired, their body is getting tired, their attention span is not very high, and you want to get them to a decision very, very quickly. It's essentially like your video. And then the second part is essentially an appendix, a supporting document where you give all your extra information, everything that you wanted to put in that pitch, but maybe it's too much. And so when a person gets home or gets off your presentation, they can digest it themselves and then make their decision. This saves everybody so much trouble, so much pain, and it's so much more effective. So you have a deck that you use for your initial presentation, and then a supporting deck that's sent to provide supporting information. Let's say we're talking about the initial PowerPoint presentation. How I would challenge you to think about this is to make it look like essentially a highway billboard. And a highway billboard, when you think about it, is a giant picture with maybe 2, 3, or 4 words. That's it. The image generally support those words. But if you think of a lot of presentations that you'll see, they look like university textbook pages. There's a graph, there's text, there's bullet, all this stuff that you need to know, or the presenter thinks that you need to know. But an important thing to realize is that as you're speaking, the listener can't multitask. They can't listen to you and read everything on your page and look at everything. They can't do both. So you got to choose. And the better choice is for them to listen to you. You have to be the message, and the PowerPoint is the support. All the heavy information is added in the supporting document. Because if you're not the message, if you're not the primary, why even bother having you in the first place? Why put everybody through the pain of having a presentation in the first place when you could have just sent them a document for them to read? So it's a very powerful way of thinking about this. So that's simplify. Always think, what can I cut out to make my presentation simpler and more effective? The last point I want to cover is this concept of practice. And practice is the most crucial component, as I mentioned earlier, because it is what allows you to then be comfortable with the interaction, comfortable with the humor, and all those extra bonus things that you can do and you learn in public speaking and communication. But there's a difference in types of practice. There's one type of practice that is just regular practice, and then there's another one that's called deliberate practice. And I'd like to use this story as an example to illustrate the point. 2 years prior to me starting the exercise device company, I worked in the Dominican Republic as a strength coach at a baseball academy. And the mission of the academy was to prepare young Dominican baseball players for Major League Baseball's international draft, which happened every year. And although I spent the vast majority of my time with the athletes in the gym, every day I had a good portion of time to spend looking at the athletes train in the actual sport of baseball, watching them practice. And one of the tools that they use to practice is called the batting cage. And for those of you who are not familiar with the batting cage, it's essentially a giant metal structure or a giant structure that has a bunch of webbing around. And on one side, you have someone to throw the ball, the pitcher. And on the other side, you have a batter who hits. And what regular practice is essentially just a loop, a feedback loop. The pitcher throws the ball, the batter swings, the batter hits or misses, one of the two happens, and the cycle happens again over and over and over again. And a person's progress goes up about this high to a point, but there's a maximum point that's reached in terms of the individual's progress. Now, deliberate practice is one level higher. It's a feedback loop with one extra step, and that extra step is the coach. So the exact same sequence happens. The pitcher throws, the batter swings, he hits, he misses. One of the two things happen. If he hits, the coach goes, all right, this is what you have to do next time to ensure that you hit it again. If he misses, the coach makes a suggestion of perhaps next time, if you make this small adjustment, you're more likely to hit it. And this cycle repeats itself over and over and over again, and progress is much greater using deliberate practice. And so how this pertains to becoming a better communicator is for you all to use deliberate practice in your training development, in your communication development. And you do that by replacing the coach, the baseball coach, with either Toastmasters group, Galaxy speakers, or your own video camera, right? So at Galaxy speakers, they can give you feedback every iteration of your presentation to tell you what you can do better next time. And that's the beauty of having people who know what they're doing, because your growth rate increases at a faster rate than if you did it by yourself. What a video camera does is it allows you to get visual feedback of your presentation. The irony is that most people have never ever seen themselves present or communicate. They've never seen themselves, so they don't truly know. A video camera will allow you to look at what you did and then make an adjustment. Watching yourself live on Zoom or in a mirror is not the same, because that's a moment by moment, play by play. You don't have the luxury of being able to look back and see modifications. You're only looking at what just happened at that moment, and you're more likely not to see the bigger picture. And that's why taking a video camera and recording your next pitch 10, 15, 20 times, practicing it over and over again, your level of familiarity with the material will dramatically increase. Your competency will dramatically increase, and so will your confidence. So that is the third technique, practice. As I come to a close, I want to leave you with this last thought. Developing your ability to communicate is one of the most freeing, liberating things that you'll ever go through in your life from a professional setting, because there's no way for you to ever anticipate all the different situations and scenarios that will come up where you're going to be called on to speak, as Harris mentioned at the beginning. You may be called upon to give an impromptu answer to your boss's suggestion. You may need to propose an idea that perhaps gives you a raise or moves your team or your project in a different direction. And presenting the work isn't going to be enough. You're going to be able to have to persuade other people. So I want you to really think that you are now not only a professional in your field, but you're also a salesperson, a communicator, a person whose job it is to persuade others to do things that you want them to do. And a very powerful way to do that is to always remember and apply the ideas of stand, simplify, and practice. And as the new year has come on, it might be a great time to make a New Year's resolution to develop your communication skills with Galaxy speakers. Thank you.